Tailgate lights on. Beautiful.
This is video 1 of my Lone Peak camper build. This is not a how-to, but it's a how I built it and why, including the electrical, which I definitely wrestled with and had second thoughts about doing myself. Before I left to get the Lone Peak installed, I had to do the least exciting part of the process, which was to seal the bed frame. Now, I watched a couple videos on this, and I will just link them below because they have way more detailed information than I'm going to be able to provide. But the one thing I will mention is that I failed to do a great job of sealing the bed frame that is closest to the cab. So I would definitely take that off, seal that up. I get a tiny bit of water in from those two sections on the passenger and driver side coming through the bed frame. It's not major, but definitely something that next summer I'm going to have to lift the camper up and seal up. I make mistakes so that you don't have to. Next, it was time for the installation. I drove up to Wenatchee, Washington for the install. Communication from Lone Peak was great the entire time. They were actually able to get me in a few weeks earlier than originally quoted. Once the truck was in the bay, the install took only about an hour, which is great. One thing I definitely recommend is while they're doing the walkthrough with you, to film it. Really helpful to go back and to retain that information to review the video, because when they are giving you that information, it's just like drinking from a fire hose. Up until this point, all my ideas were just in my head or on my iPad, sketched out. So it was really fun to come back and be able to start tinkering with what the interior build was actually going to be like in real life. So here is going to be the floorboard for the bed of the truck. I've shaped it out here. I will attach a rubber flooring to the bottom of this, and I'm not sure if I'm going to add some insulation, but I might. We'll see. Quick disclaimer before I get into this, I'm not an electrician. This is not a wiring guide. This is just how I did my build. There's a couple of videos that I referenced that were very helpful for me. I will link those below. For context, here's what I installed. At the center of the system is a Renogy 12 volt 30 amp dual input DC to DC charger with built-in MPPT. And that feeds into my Renogy 200 amp hour lithium battery. For AC power, I'm running a 2000 watt Renogy inverter. And for topping things off, I added a 100 watt Renogy flexible solar panel to the top of the camper. Everything with the electrical really started with the battery box. I built the box to fit over the wheel well, and while the overall size stayed the same, the details evolved as I went. I wanted the battery easy to reach, easy to monitor, and not buried behind finished panels if something needed attention. So instead of building cabinets first and forcing the electrical to fit, I locked the battery box in early and let everything else reference that. As the system came together, I ended up changing where pass-through holes for cabling lived and how things entered and exited the box. Ultimately, as you'll see, I thought that I was going to be able to fit the inverter in this box, and it just wouldn't work out. Everything here is built so that after a year of use, trying it out, seeing how things work, if I want to modify something, I can. Up here. On paper, the plan made sense, but in reality, this is where things just got hard. This battery box is definitely been through the ringer a little bit. Here's where we're at now with it. Just trying to make the layout work. Where cables come up, the battery sits underneath here. Gotta clean this up. But yeah, I've been just having to go back and like add little cutouts. Using this, 0 gauge wire is heavy duty and it's hard to bend. So I've had to kind of like work around that. Definitely something that I think if I was to go back and buy the Lone Peak again, I thought I could save some money doing this myself. I would probably go back and just have them do it for me, wire it up. We'll see. I don't know. I like doing things myself, but this one might have been worth just having somebody do it. But anyway, I just keep plugging along. I'm too far down the path now to go back. Now that part of the process was for sure frustrating, but I'm glad I did it. I learned a new skill and I learned the system so that if something goes wrong, I know how to fix it. So positive coming in to switch 250 amp breaker. We'll go to the bus bar, to another breaker, 250 that will go to the inverter. It was fun to finally put the battery box in the back of the truck. I secured it to the bed frame to where one of the tie downs was in the back of the truck.
This is a little strip that Lone Peak gave me to hide the wires here from the juice box. So I'm gonna run there. Positive and negative down that, hide it in there. There we go, nice and clean. Like that. Breakers. Power on. And juice box is on. Tailgate lights on. Beautiful. Now I've just got to get
The other piece of this charging setup is tying into the truck's starter battery. That's what allows the system to charge while I'm driving. I ran the wire down the passenger side of the truck in through the existing plastic cargo bay.
Didn't love having to put the inverter here. I wanted it originally to be underneath there, but I just could not find the space to do it, so mounted it there.
I can say after a few weeks of use, I don't think I'll ever run out of power in that thing. The solar setup here is intentionally simple. I added a 100-watt flexible panel, not to fully recharge the system, but just help maintain it. Installation was pretty straightforward. I used strips of corrugated plastic board attached to the panel with 3M double-sided tape, and then used more double-sided tape to secure everything to the top of the tent. That gave it a little structure without adding weight and allowed wind and water to pass through.
Let's go down front first. Perfect. So I got the solar panel up. Now I'm feeding the wires down.
I ran the wiring through the dedicated solar wiring port that I had Lone Peak installed during the build. So that's the electrical setup on my truck, the Lone Peak camper. Again, none of this is meant to be a blueprint, just kind of what I did. In the next video, we'll walk through the interior build of the cabinets, the cabinet that wraps around the battery box on the right side with a couple of drawers, and the cabinet on the left side of the build. This is where the build really starts to feel more fun and more usable. So if you're building something similar, hopefully there's some ideas in here that you can use to adapt for your own build.